Business email can be your friend or your enemy. Used properly, it can improve your productivity and your career prospects. But alas, one small misstep and you can throw all that progress down the drain. Let's take a look at 13 of these often overlooked missteps so you don't fall into any of these traps. Stick around until the end when we review a few that have stymied more than a few careers. Welcome to Accounts Payable Soundbites, the program where we share tips and explain simple and complex accounts payable topics and issues in short, concise soundbites. I'm Mary Schaefer, AP Now's founder, and while I love email, I really do, I'm afraid I've made more than my fair share of the following mistakes. So mistake number one, don't forget, or if you forget, that an email is like a postcard. You never know who is going to see it. It can be forwarded, copied, and of course, there's always that dreaded reply all. So think twice before you put something in writing that might come back to haunt you later. Mistake number two, and this is when you're involved in an email chain with someone, you're having a conversation, and you forget to change the subject line when the subject gets changed. So you might start off discussing, let's say with your boss, a particular invoice problem, and then you start talking about vacation time, but you don't change the subject line. And then a few days later, a week later, a month later, when you're going back looking for that email that discussed the vacation time, you can't find it because it's under that email that says, invoice from ABC company. Mistake number three is not looking closely at the language that you use in the email. Sometimes we're too curt. I'm sure you've received emails from someone and you've thought, is he mad at me or is she mad at me or did I offend her? When actually nothing could be further from the truth. But you dash off the email quickly and you don't stop and go back and look and see how it sounds. So just a quick read before you hit that send button will sometimes make you realize, ooh, this sounds a little too curt. Okay, mistake number four, I'm sure you've heard this one, not that you necessarily listen to it because it's really tempting, and that is responding when you're angry. Never respond to an email when you're angry because then you might say something that upon reflection you wish you hadn't said, or you might put something in the email that doesn't sound right because you're so angry, your grammar is off, your spelling's off, etc. So just hold off as much as you can until you're not angry. Mistake number five, be very careful if you're going to use emojis. Now, most advice when it comes to business emails and emojis will tell you never use them. And I want to say that that's probably a good piece of advice, but I'm going to be honest, I occasionally use them. I'm especially fond of that thumbs up, which saves me, writing a whole sentence when, I can just say it with an emoji. So if you're going to use them, know who you're talking to and make sure that it comes across professionally. And remember that issue that we talked about when we first started. You never know who that email is going to be forwarded to. So best piece of advice probably is don't use emojis. But I have to admit, sometimes I do. Okay, the next mistake or misstep, if you will, and it's the same in other means of correspondence, is the timeliness of your response. You want to respond in a timely manner. Don't leave the email, you think, oh, I'm busy now, I'll respond tomorrow, or I'll respond tonight, because the odds are you'll forget, and then it'll be 2 weeks later, and then before you know it, you're running looking for the email, you can't find it, or you just completely forget about it. So as much as possible, when you get that email, if you know the answer, respond immediately, even if you're busy. Okay, but I know that interrupts with productivity on other ends, but a timely response is good. Mistake number 7 that we see people making is avoid those annoying reply alls with meaningless information. Too often an email will go out from, let's say, the boss to, 12 subordinates about some particular issue. And one person responds and they have something intelligent or interesting to say or something that adds value to the conversation. And then before you know it, 6 of the other people feel they have to say something and they respond, but they don't add anything to the conversation. And everybody's email box is then inundated with these useless responses. So when you're going to respond, make sure you have something that's useful to say or adds to the conversation. The next mistake regards sending attachments. Now, I'm not saying don't send attachments, which in an ideal world, that's what you do. But, we have to work. We have to get our jobs done. So when you're sending attachments, a few things. Number one, make sure the person that you're sending the attachment to is expecting it. So they're expecting you to send a file. Don't just send it out of the blue, because with all the frauds that we have going on, and some of those frauds are perpetrated by opening an attachment that you don't know who it's from. So make sure your recipient knows that you're going to send it to them. And you might even send them an email first or a text first saying, sending you an email with the file about whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's number one. And number two, be careful when you name your files. Make sure they're easily identifiable, not only to you, but to the person who's receiving them. So I know, for example, when I write books, I usually have a chapter in each book. And when I'm, working on the manuscript, I title each of the chapters C1, C2, C3, C4. Well, that works fine for me when I go back and I look at it, because I have a folder with the book name and then all my chapters in there. So I know what they are. But if I were to send it to somebody, they get this file that says C2. What is it? So, it really should be the book name, chapter 2, etc. So just something that whoever sees it, they'll be able to know what is in that file. This might mean, by the way, that you have to rename some of your files if you're going to share them with other people. Okay, before we get to the last few items, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to this channel. It's free, completely private, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Okay, and if you are subscribing on YouTube, if you ring that bell next to the subscribe button, you'll be notified whenever we post new content. We post new content usually twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And if you're a Wordle fan, we've been posting some Wordle videos on Saturdays, because, we like to have fun too. And by the way, you don't need a YouTube account to subscribe. You can subscribe to this channel on YouTube simply if you have a Gmail account. Okay. Next issue, number 9. Don't forget to include a signature. Sometimes, you send an email and of course the person knows who's sending it because they can see your name in the from field. But as the responses go back and forth, if there's no signature on them, or there's several people in this conversation, if you will, in this email conversation, after a while, it's difficult to tell who sent what and who said what. And you want credit, by the way, for your good ideas. You don't want it being given to somebody else. So each of your emails should have a signature in it of some sort. Now, speaking of signatures, don't forget to put your signature block in, but to have your name, the name of your company, and your phone number in that block, and maybe your email address, although in theory they can get it if you're sending them an email. But I can't tell you the number of times when I go to call somebody in response to an email, and in fact, they may even have said, call me, and I can't find their phone number because it's not in their emails. And yeah, if I have in my address book, I might have it there, but a lot of times I don't. So always put your name, company name, and your phone number so people can get in touch with you. Number 11, be very careful about using humor and sarcasm, because what you say in person, when somebody can see you, they can hear the tone of your voice, they can see the look on your face, that does not come across in email. And sometimes it really falls flat. And in fact, going back to the issue we discussed in the beginning about being curt, it may just come across as curt, or that you're angry, or just plain rude. So yeah, it's nice to be able to use humor every once in a while, but be very careful when you do. Make sure that the recipient will understand it. Okay, coming down towards the end, mistake number 12, don't forget to proof your emails. Real quickly, just do a quick read. And the reason for that is you're looking for typos and you're looking for tone, like we've discussed before, because you don't want to come across curt. But you really want to look for those typos. You don't have to spend a long time doing it. Just do it really quickly. If you've kept spell check on, which is something we advocate, then the typos should have an underlined in red. But sometimes the typos won't show that way because, for example, you'll have meant there, T-H-E-I-R, but you'll have spelled it T-H-E-R-E because you're in such a hurry. So you want to look for stuff like that, because remember, even though you might be writing to a colleague who doesn't really care about that type of thing, the email could get forwarded, copied, reply all, etc. Okay, so just take a quick read. And then the last tip is sometimes when people write, they just write all in lowercase, okay? And they don't bother to capitalize the first letter or the first word in each sentence. Okay, minor point. And again, if you're going back and forth with a colleague or even your boss who you have a good relationship with, no big deal. However, that email can be forwarded or copied and sent to somebody else. So you want to come across as professional And one way to look unprofessional is, not to bother capitalizing your sentences. Along the same lines, be very careful about putting something in all caps because, all caps is the equivalent to yelling. It looks unprofessional. Now, this is not to say that from time to time, if you're trying to emphasize something, that you might not use a word in all cap, but use that sparingly just when you're trying to make a point. And whatever you do, don't send something in all caps that kind of screams out, I'm an amateur, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. Misuse of email, by the way, isn't the only reason careers sometimes stall. Sometimes our own fears get in the way. In an earlier 3-minute soundbite, we discussed 3 big fears that can ruin an accounting or accounts payable career. A link to it will appear below in the show notes, and on YouTube, a link will appear momentarily to the left. As always, guys, we appreciate those thumbs up, those subscribes, those shares. They're always appreciated. Good luck.